Had to run the gauntlet to get here, sorry.
Hey Joe, how you doing?
Coach, you've been pretty consistent since you got the job about not changing the uniforms. What might have changed to go forward that you may change the uniforms at this point?
I reserve the right to change my mind.
Bill, how big is the walk-on program going to be now, and what plans are in place to move that forward?
Yeah, I won't get into the details of the plans, but obviously that's a big part of it, especially within the state of Pennsylvania, where you can go out and because the in-state tuition isn't quite as big as the out-of-state tuition, and you can find some good, tough, smart Pennsylvania football players to come in and be good Penn State players.
Does this create opportunities for them? Do you think it's going to make kids strive?
Well, I can tell you that, yes, sure, Guy. I can tell you in the last 2 days we've had over 150 emails, primarily from kids in Pennsylvania. You know, again, people will ask me how many of those kids can play. I understand that, but it shows the interest in Penn State, and it shows that Penn State is not dead.
Well, how important was it for you this week to get out, and maybe damage control isn't the right word, but you're on ESPN, you're out here, you're talking about everything. How important is that with everything that's gone down?
It's really important. You know, it's important that people hear my opinion on the situation that came upon us on Monday. So it's extremely important for me to get out and talk about Penn State and our football program and our players that are back in State College right now that are sticking together and working extremely hard for the 2012 season.
Bill, the players can come to you and your staff for support. Who have you gone to for counsel, advice, and the same kind of support?
You know, obviously, personally, I lean on my wife. I lean on professionally, I lean on my staff. I mean, we have a tremendous, I don't know if you know anything about our staff, but, you know, we got a heck of a staff that's been in all kinds of different situations. Professionally, you know, I can tell you that many coaches, both that I've worked for or that I know in the profession, have reached out to me and offered support. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you the names that have given me calls and just given me support. So I think that shows a lot about the coaching profession, at least the guys that I've worked for and that I know. So, you know, I just there's a lot of people that I've talked to over the last couple of days.
Bill, what did it mean to you personally to have a large group of players come out yesterday and reaffirm their commitment or their faith in the program?
It shows you what Penn State's all about. It shows you what these kids are all about. This is a prideful bunch of kids. These are tough kids. People that aren't on the inside of that program right now have no idea about the toughness, the confirmation to me of why I took this job. You know, we've got bright kids. We've got kids that want to stick together. Now, I know that there may be some kids that'll leave. I understand that. But right now, we've got over 50 players that have said that they're staying.
Bill, why do you think the 2012 team is so important to the future of the program?
You know, again, I think we have a chance to be a decent football team, and we had a good spring practice. We've got a good core group of players of, you know, many guys that I think can be really good players for us this year. So I think we can field a very competitive team, and I think that would show a lot of people that we're not dead.
Bill, you were quoted as saying yesterday that your players were holed up and lashed because there were coaches in the parking lot. How much does that bother you? And ethically, do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, Joe, I appreciate the question. I said what I said on that yesterday, and I'll let the record stand on that. You know, I'll just let the record stand on what I said yesterday on that.
Bill, you mentioned Kirk and George. I think they were third by name.
Doug Marone.
And Doug.
Many more since then.
Right. Was that to put out there, at least these guys called them? You know, in other words, to say they were going to...
Those are good coaches. Yeah. Those are good coaches.
The leadership that Zordich and Monty showed yesterday, how much leadership do you have on the team, and how important will that be for some of those guys to...
We have great leadership on this team. Michael Zordich and Michael Motti did a great job yesterday, but we've got guys here today, Jordan Hill and John Urschel, Gerald Hodges. We've got a number of guys, Matt Stankiewicz, our center, Justin Brown, one of our receivers. I mean, I could go right down the list of guys. Matt McCloyne, obviously, came out with a great statement, and there's just a lot of good leaders on this football team.
Bill, do you think Penn State in some ways has been unfairly branded? And we're still discussion about culture of college affiliation and what's wrong. Do you think it's like Penn State's being voted wrongfully in terms of what's wrong with college affiliation?
It's not for me to comment on that. It's for me to tell everybody in Penn State Nation to turn the page.
Why was Craig Fitzgerald such an important hire, and what's he doing differently?
He was a very important hire because of what I believe in, which is Olympic lifting and speed training and conditioning and lateral movement training, and he has a breadth of knowledge about all of that I don't know many people that do. So he and I coached together at University of Maryland, have a lot of respect for each other, and he's done a tremendous job in the 6 months that he's been here of getting this team ready to play from a conditioning, speed training, and obviously weightlifting standpoint.
When you met with the kids that are in your office, how raw have the emotions been? Do you have to pick some guys up?
Yeah, sure. So, some kid, guys have a lot of questions. I'll keep the conversations personal between myself and the players, but some guys have a lot of questions. They're not sure exactly. They know more now than they did on Monday, but they had a lot of questions at that time. And since that day, I've seen a team that has really picked itself up and is working extremely hard. And I can tell you that there's a bunch of tough kids on that football team that have been through a lot.
Does that manual trip your heartstrings a little bit?
Sure, being a father, and I had a conference call with the parents the other night, and I thought that went as well as it could go. And but yeah, sure, I'm a father, and I certainly wouldn't want my sons to go through what they're going through. But again, like I said up there, and like I've said for 3 days, life's about adversity, and how do you deal with it? What do? Just say, oh, well, this happened to us. What are we going to do now? No, you punch back, and that's the way I was brought up, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Jody, or Bill, sorry. Do you consider this a fight?
Jody? Did you call me Jody?
Jody, yeah, sorry.
Jody.
Bill, do you consider this a fight now?
No.
And is this ever anything you've encountered prior to this as a coach? Just a fight more than anything this year?
Yeah, again, obviously I haven't encountered anything quite like this. I've been in pro football for 5 years, so there's no NCAA in pro football. So, I consider it, a fight in this aspect. That again, it's about overcoming adversity. It's about what's right for the kids at Penn State. It's about doing a great job of keeping this team together and having a really good training camp and being ready to go on September 1st. So, to me, that's what it's about right now.
You talked a little bit about Jack and how that was a challenge that was presented. How has that helped you in the sense of preparing? Some of this must seem trivial compared to what you and your wife have dealt with.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, at the end of the day, life's about a lot of things, and NCAA sanctions aren't the end of the world. And so I think that people have to keep things in perspective and remember that there's a lot more important things in the world, like victims of child abuse, like our own families, like these kids and their emotions right now. So yeah, like I've said from Monday on, is my job is to keep this 2012 football team together. But after that, it's just about competing and doing the best job you can.
About Monday, have you heard much from former players?
I have, yeah, from former players. I've heard from Michael Robinson. I've heard from Derek Williams. I could list 50 guys that I've either had emails from, and I know that they're coming on campus next week for a golf tournament, and I would expect that some of those guys will probably come back a little earlier to support this football team and these kids. So yeah, I have heard from them.
Bill, how do you see the senior leadership helping you out, and do you think peer pressure's at work and trying to convince guys to stay?
I can tell you that it's a very, very strong senior class, and it's a senior class that I've been very impressed with since the day I arrived there. And as far as peer pressure and things like that, I don't know. You'd have to ask those guys, but it's more about those guys doing a great job of leading and keeping this team together.
You mentioned about you've been in the NFL obviously for the last few years. You haven't had to deal with recruiting. You mentioned good coaches that you've come across. Have you been surprised at some of the not so good coaches, I guess? Have you been surprised at some of the seedy recruiting tactics that have been used against you guys?
Nothing surprises me.
Bill, you've had some key guys in the secondary. You said they're coming back. They're going to stick with you. How important is that?
Yeah, very important, because that was a position that there was a lack of depth at anyway. So, when you hear guys like Steph Morris and Malcolm Willis and Fagnano and Adrian Amos and those guys sticking together, I think that's a really important thing.
And how about the offensive line too? Most of those guys have said that.
Yeah, they are, and that's a very important thing too, because there is a lot of depth there, and there's guys there that are really talented in my opinion. So it's really important that those guys have stuck it out, and I'm proud that they have.
There's no manual for what you're going through. How did you formulate a plan to deal with it?
I'd tell you that the plan is still being formulated. You know, it's only been a couple days, but there is no manual. But we have a very bright staff. We've got a bunch of guys on this staff that have a wealth of experience, and so I've leaned on those guys. We've had a few brainstorm sessions already. We've got some plans in place, some plans that are still in the works. So you know, there is no manual, but we're going to build it pretty quickly. We'll have the manual at some point, I can tell you that.
Just in these past few days, you've been at State College and then in Bristol and Chicago. What has this week been like for you?
ESPN was cool, I can tell you that. I've never seen anything like that. That was neat to see that. But no, I mean, it's important for Penn State people to understand how I feel and how these kids are fighting back in State College. So I felt like it was important to get out and try to get out in front. We took a lot of punches. Penn State's taken a lot of punches over the last 6 months, and it's time to punch back.
Your players are still young kids. How impressed have you been with everything they've dealt with since November?
Say that again, Corey.
Your players are all young kids. How impressed have you been with the way they've handled all this tremendous adversity since November?
Again, you know, I can't say enough about how much pride I have in coaching these guys because of that. Because these are level-headed kids, these are bright kids, these are guys that have stuck together. They're obviously mentally tough kids. They've been through a lot, and it's the reason why I took the job, to be associated with guys like this.
Can you explain the decision to bring the kids to Penn State? Bring the kids to media days?
Sure. Again, Monday was a tough day, and these kids, and Tuesday, and so these guys had expressed an interest in being able to go home and just talk to their families a little bit about everything that's gone on, and how could I ever deny them to be able to do that? So I felt like talking to their families might be a little bit more important than going to the Big Ten meetings, with all due respect to the Big Ten. And but these guys decided to come, and I felt like it was the right decision.
So it was their decision?
It was my decision.
How much contact have you had with parents, and what have you expressed to them?
I've had a conference call plus other individual calls. I'll also be meeting with parents probably throughout the weekend, and I've expressed to them why their sons came here for a fantastic education, the chance to play on TV in front of 108,000 fans, to play a great Big Ten schedule, to play for what I consider a great coaching staff. So to me, there's so many more reasons to stay than to leave. That's my opinion, and that's what I express to the parents.
Bill, did you?
Good.
You gotta roll, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.